It's amazing, isn't it? How fast things are changing these days, especially when it comes to like money and technology.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, think about it. It seems like just yesterday we were all figuring out online banking,
Right?
and now suddenly everyone's talking about digital currency.
Yeah, and our listeners are definitely curious. They want to know what's going on.
Exactly. They want to understand all this new stuff, without getting bogged down in like super technical
For
detail.
sure. It's about getting to the heart of it.
Yeah.
What really matters. And you know what's really interesting right now, and this lines up perfectly with what you sent over. It's all this buzz around cryptocurrency in India.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You shared that excerpt from a podcast called Crypto Boom India.
Hmm.
Specifically, an episode titled, I conscious of titles pest, I faded colors Koskar May. Which, for those of us who don't speak Hindi, translates to the increasing popularity of cryptocurrency in India. Is this the future of investment?
That's it. So basically what we're going to do today is try to really understand why cryptocurrency is becoming so popular, especially among young people in India.
Right.
And we're going to compare it to, those more traditional ways people invest their money.
Okay, sounds good. Let's break it down. So, the podcast we're looking at, it starts off talking about how quickly India is going digital.
Yeah, it's really setting the stage, this shift towards a more digital way of life.
Right.
It basically opens the door for new technologies.
Hmm.
And it's also really important for new ways of managing and growing your money.
For sure. For a long time, when people in India thought about investing, they probably thought about the stock market, mutual funds, or maybe those fixed deposits at a bank.
Right, those were like the tried and true options.
Exactly. But the podcast is saying there's a big change happening, especially among younger people. They're not just looking at cryptocurrency as a fad, they're thinking about it as a real way to make money.
Yeah, and even to make some extra income every month.
It's fascinating, right? So the question is why? Why this shift?
Well, the podcast gives us some pretty clear reasons for crypto's growing appeal. And the first one is that you can trade it 24/7.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Unlike the stock market, which has those set opening and closing times,
Yeah,
the cryptocurrency market never sleeps. It's always open.
right.
And that's a huge draw, especially for people who, maybe their work schedule doesn't match up with the stock market hours.
Makes sense.
It's like, imagine a store that's only open when you're stuck at work versus one that you can go to anytime.
Right. That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 24/7 trading. What else?
Well, the next reason is a big one, the one that always gets people excited. It's the potential for a big ROI, return on investment.
Yeah, the possibility of making a lot of money.
Exactly. And the podcast emphasizes this as a major factor attracting younger investors. The idea that you could, see some serious gains even if you didn't invest a ton of money to begin with.
That's super appealing. But I guess it comes with risks too, right?
Oh, absolutely. You have to remember, those high potential returns, they often come with equally high risks.
Mm.
Unlike more traditional markets where things might grow more slowly and predictably,
Uh-huh.
the crypto market can be like a roller coaster. It can go up really high really fast, but it can also drop just as quickly.
Yeah, so you really need to be okay with a certain level of risk if you're going to get into crypto.
Definitely. It requires a different mindset. You can't be afraid of those ups and downs.
Okay, good point. Now, the podcast also mentioned something about passive income,
Yes,
like staking and yield farming.
right. It's this idea of, your money working for you even while you're sleeping. Pretty appealing, huh?
For sure. So how does that work?
Well, think of staking, like putting your money in a fixed deposit at a bank. But instead of earning interest from the bank, you're basically locking up your cryptocurrency to help keep that blockchain network running smoothly.
Oh, okay.
And in return for helping out, for keeping things secure and stable, you get rewards,
Oh, I see.
often in the form of more of that cryptocurrency.
That's interesting.
Yield farming is a bit more complicated, but basically you're lending or staking your crypto on these platforms called decentralized finance platforms,
Got it.
and you earn interest or fees that way.
Mm-hmm.
So both of these methods, staking and yield farming, they offer the potential for you to make money regularly.
Right. So your crypto is basically making more crypto for you, even when you're not actively trading.
Exactly. It's like having your money work for you.
That's a cool concept.
And the last thing the podcast mentions about crypto's popularity is the growing influence of, blockchain technology itself.
Right. It's not just about Bitcoin or whatever, it's about the technology behind it all.
Exactly. People are starting to realize that cryptocurrency runs on blockchain, And blockchain has uses way beyond just digital currencies.
Yeah, like what?
Well, think about things like secure data storage, supply chain management, all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
So for a lot of people, especially young people who are tech savvy, this just adds another layer of, excitement and potential long-term value.
It's like they're investing in the future. Okay, so we've got a pretty good understanding of why crypto is becoming so popular in India. Now, the podcast actually compares cryptocurrency with those traditional investments we were talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's super important, looking at both sides, the advantages and the risks.
For sure.
So for the advantages of crypto, one thing we've already talked about is that potential for bigger profits, even if you don't start with a huge investment,
Right.
which can be really attractive, especially for younger investors who might be just starting out.
Definitely.
You don't need a ton of money to get started with crypto.
Right. You don't need to be rich to start exploring this.
And then, of course, there's the 24-hour market availability. We talked about that, how it gives you so much flexibility.
So for someone in India working a 9-to-5 job, they're not limited by when the market's open, right?
Well, exactly. They can trade anytime. And on top of that, the podcast mentions all these new income opportunities that are popping up with decentralized finance, NFTs, and Web3.
Those are all kind of new, aren't they?
Yeah, they're definitely newer concepts, but they're all part of this rapidly growing digital economy.
Oh, wow.
And cryptocurrency is at the center of it. So there are all these different ways to get involved and potentially make money.
I'm not sure I totally understand all of that, to be honest.
Well, think of DeFi like trying to build a whole new financial system on the internet,
Okay.
but without banks. So instead of going to a bank to lend your money and earn interest, you could lend your crypto directly to someone else through a DeFi platform.
Okay.
And you might earn even more interest that way. But of course, there are also new risks with that.
Right.
Now, NFTs, those are like digital collectibles. They can represent ownership of, digital art, music, even virtual land.
Really?
Yeah, and you can buy them, sell them, and sometimes even make money from them through royalties or other things.
That's wild.
And Web3, that's this idea of a more decentralized internet built on blockchain technology.
Okay.
So it could lead to new kinds of online services and digital assets that people can actually own and make money from.
Wow. Okay, so DeFi, NFTs, and Web3, they're all part of this new digital economy thing.
Exactly. It's a whole new world. But, we have to be realistic. The podcast also talks about the risks that come with cryptocurrency.
Right.
And probably the biggest one is market volatility. We touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, the fact that prices can go up and down so quickly.
Exactly. It's unpredictable. So while there's a chance to make a lot of money quickly, there's also a chance to lose a lot just as fast.
Yeah. You really have to know what you're getting into.
Absolutely. You have to be comfortable with that level of risk. It's not like those more traditional investments where you can expect things to grow steadily over time.
Okay, so volatility, that's risk number one. What else?
Well, the second big risk is the whole regulatory situation in India.
Right, all the rules and stuff.
Yeah, because right now, there aren't any clear or comprehensive regulations for cryptocurrency in India.
Oh, that's not good.
And that creates a lot of uncertainty for investors. Government policies can change, and those changes could affect the value of cryptocurrencies or even whether they're legal or not.
So it's kind of like a bit of a Wild West situation.
It's true. It adds another layer of risk that you don't really see as much in those traditional markets.
Okay, so big potential, but big risks too.
Got it. Now, the podcast makes this interesting point that it's not all about making quick money for these young people in India.
Right, it's not just about the profits.
They're actually taking the time to learn about the technology itself, about blockchain. Exactly. They're digging deeper, and that's a good sign for the future of this whole space.
It shows they're serious about it. And the podcast also mentions some what they called smart investment strategies.
Oh, yeah, those are helpful.
Like HO dealing. What is that?
Oh, HO dealing is a big one in the crypto community.
Okay.
It basically means you hold on to your cryptocurrency for the long haul, no matter what the price is doing in the short term.
So you just ride the waves.
Exactly. You're in it for the long game. And people usually HODL those more established cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
They believe they're going to go up in value over time.
That's the idea. It's kind of like the buy and hold strategy people use in the stock market.
Got it. And the podcast also mentioned staking and yield farming again. Right?
Yeah. This time they were talking about them as ways to potentially earn money every month
Okay.
without actually having to trade all the time.
So it's all about that passive income.
Exactly. And then they talked about NFTs and Web3 again, framing them as like the future of digital assets and online interactions.
Right, we talked about those a bit earlier.
So they're encouraging people to explore these new and exciting areas to see what's out there.
It's all about being on the cutting edge.
For sure.
And then they gave this really important piece of advice, DYOR.
Oh, that's crucial.
Do your own research.
Yep. It's a reminder that you can't just blindly follow the crowd or listen to random advice.
Especially in the crypto world.
Exactly. Because it can be confusing and it changes so fast. You have to do your homework, understand the risks, and make your own decisions.
Wise words. Okay, so let's talk about the future. The last part of the podcast focused on the potential future of crypto in India. What did they say?
Well, they acknowledge that the lack of clear government regulations, which we already talked about, adds a level of risk.
Right, it's a big unknown.
But they also pointed out some positive signs, things that suggest a good future for digital assets in India.
Oh, that's good. Like what are they seeing?
For one, they mentioned government initiatives like developing a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. So the government is actually exploring digital currencies themselves,
Interesting.
which could lead to clearer and maybe even more favorable regulations down the line.
It's like if the government is doing it, it must be legitimate, right?
In a way, yeah.
Hmm.
It's a sign that they're taking digital assets seriously.
Now, if the government issues its own digital currency, wouldn't that compete with the existing cryptocurrencies?
It's a good question. Some people think it could create competition, but others think it could actually be a good thing for the whole crypto space.
How so?
Well, a government-backed digital currency could add stability and trust,
Huh?
and that might indirectly benefit all digital assets. It could also push the government to create clearer regulations.
Interesting. It could legitimize the whole thing. What else did the podcast mention?
They talked about how more and more companies are starting to accept crypto payments.
Oh, yeah, that's happening here too.
It's not super common yet, but it's definitely a trend.
Right.
And it shows that cryptocurrencies are slowly becoming more mainstream.
Yeah, like an actual part of the economy.
Exactly. Plus, there's a lot of investment happening in India right now in startups and Web3 technologies,
Okay.
which shows that people are really confident about the future of these areas. So all this innovation and entrepreneurial spirit around crypto and blockchain, it's definitely growing in India.
For sure. It's like a new frontier. Anything else?
The last thing they mentioned was the increasing use of blockchain technology in all sorts of sectors in India, not just finance.
Right, like we were talking about before.
So that just strengthens the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
It shows that people are starting to really grasp the potential of blockchain.
Okay, so it sounds like even with all the regulatory uncertainty, things are looking pretty good for crypto in India.
Yeah, I think that's the overall takeaway. There's a lot of enthusiasm, especially from younger people. Blockchain is being adopted across industries, and the government is exploring a CBDC.
Right. All signs point to crypto playing a big role in India's future.
Exactly. It's an exciting time.
Okay, so let's sum all this up for our listeners who've been with us on this deep dive.
Okay.
What we've learned from this Crypto Boom India podcast is that there's a huge interest in cryptocurrency in India, particularly among young people.
Uh-huh.
They're attracted to the possibility of big returns, the 204/7 trading, and the potential to make passive income.
Right.
But we also talked about the risks, the market volatility, and the fact that regulations are still being figured out.
Very important to keep in mind.
And it's not just about the money. People are learning about the technology behind it all, blockchain.
Absolutely.
And they're thinking about long-term strategies like HODLing and exploring those newer areas,
Yeah.
NFTs and Web3.
That's right.
So while there's still some uncertainty around regulations, there are a lot of positive signs.
Yeah, definitely.
The government is exploring a CBDC, businesses are starting to accept crypto, and blockchain is being used in more and more industries.
All pointing towards a bright future for crypto in India.
Exactly. And one last reminder, always do your own research, DYOR.
Couldn't agree more.
Things change so fast in the crypto world, you gotta stay informed.
For sure.
And now for a final thought, something to chew on.
Okay.
We've been talking about how finance and technology are merging in India, right?
Right.
So considering how fast things are going digital and the government's interest in a CBDC, how do you think traditional financial institutions like banks are going to adapt to this whole crypto thing?
That is a good question.
How are they going to fit into this new landscape? It's something to think about. It's not just about India either.
Yeah. That's a global question.
It could change the future of finance everywhere. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Sounds good.